Our next presentation is about digital product passport, the ecosystems to enable DPPs. We have Sjoerd Rongen. He is from TNO and he is the digital product passport coordinator. Please give him a big round of applause.
Round of applause. 박수로 여러분 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
All right, and there are my slides. Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for having me. Thanks also for the organizers of this this event. Oh, all right, thank you. It's, let's try. I hope that works and everybody can hear me all right. All right, perfect. So as mentioned, my name is Sjoerd Rongen. I'm from the Netherlands. And if the clicker works, there we go. The Netherlands is that small red country in northwestern Europe over there. I work specifically for the Dutch research institute called TNO. TNO is a partially government-funded non-profit research institute all over the Netherlands with about 4,000 employees. And within the institute, I coordinate our research into digital product passports across various domains, but for me personally, with a background in IT. So that's something you maybe see coming through a little bit in the presentation. Worth mentioning, TNO recently also opened an office here in South Korea, but that's very recent, so it's not yet on the map there. All right. Continuing a little bit with the type of work TNO does, because it will be relevant later as well. As I mentioned, large institute, lots of different domains we work on, but most relevant today is our work on digitization, IT, and sustainability, because those two intersect when it comes to product passports and the ESPR, for example. And we tend to do that in all sorts of collaborations between academia, so universities, public partners, and then private companies. So we try to set up these networks for research and implementation of new innovations. For me personally, that work usually is around the topic of sustainability, not just the ecological sustainability that is so prevalent in the ESPR and in the earlier presentation by the Commission, by Pierre, also in the sense of economic and social sustainability. Mainly because if we have something that adds value to companies, these companies will actually thrive and survive in our sort of competitive landscape. So if we do something that makes a company more ecologically sustainable as well as increases their earning power, we'll have long-lasting ecological sustainability or social sustainability, of course. Right. Those terms can be a little bit vague, so I have some examples here. With economic sustainability, as I mentioned, being usually revolving around earning power of companies, but increasingly also about our strategic autonomy and ability to keep our companies going when, for example, a ship gets stuck sideways in the Suez Canal and imports to Europe get slowed, or other geopolitical events that may happen, of course, that sort of highlight our dependency on, for example, critical raw materials, which is this table here. This is a table from the European Commission that they put together on resources Europe is very dependent on for importing. Ecologic sustainability, not one that needs a lot of explaining today, I think. The picture here is from Earth Overshoot Day. Basically just highlights we need about twice the amount of resources and place to put our mess that we're leaving behind if you want to keep going. Obviously, we don't have 2 planets, so we'll need to about half of our research usage, which is in line, I think, with what was mentioned earlier as the driving forces behind the ESPR. And then finally, there we go. When it comes to social sustainability, one quite often not discussed as much, but still to me quite important personally, deals with all sorts of labor conditions, right? So the example here is from a Dutch chocolate brand, Tony Chocolonely. They claim, at least in their yearly report, that in Ivory Coast, a coca farmer gets paid about half of a livable minimum wage on average. So room for improvement there in fair working conditions as well. So in my mind, given that we are currently reliant on all these critical raw materials that we're not recycling, we are using too many resources and not recycling our waste efficiently, and we're not paying people a fair living wage in general for a lot of domains. we have some work to do when it comes to sustainability, right? But what do we need to do exactly? That's the big question. And for me, answering that question starts with improving traceability, right? So if we don't really know how our value chains are set up and what's happening and where our products come from, how they're made and what can still be done with them, it's very difficult to improve these sustainability topics in a sort of efficient manner, right? And for the traceability, of course, we get to the digital product passport, which to me is the system that will enable this traceability. So we want to be able to keep track of a wide range of attributes, of a wide range of products, so we can do all sorts of analysis, both the things that we need to do for legislation, as well as the things we can do beyond legislation that adds value to companies, because that's most likely where the added value will be for organizations. But of course, within a set of constraints. As was mentioned earlier, we do not want our intellectual property to become public, for example. We do want to stay in control of our own data. So this is quite a complicated challenge, right? We want to share a lot about a lot of products with a lot of partners, but still maintain control over our data and our value chain. All right. Now, fortunately, this leap, if you will, from sustainability to traceability, and then, of course, also the circular economy aspect that I haven't made explicitly here, but is sort of in here as well. That leap of why we need digital product passports has been made by policymakers as well, and all sorts of legislation. It has been drafted or is being drafted right now. ESPR has been presented before, but there's also, for example, battery regulation that I think quite a lot of organizations here are familiar with. I saw a nice demo earlier on in the trade floor there about a battery passport. There's legislation for construction, what have you, right? So we get all these different domains and legislation demanding them to provide more transparency and traceability into their value chain. Right. Now, this slide doesn't bear repeating because it's the same one you've already presented, so thank you for that. But this is coming for a lot of domains, right? And if you see the most recent communiqué on the European single market, the European Commission already in that states that they will introduce these product passports for pretty much all product categories that they are going to take a look at in the upcoming years. So when in doubt whether your company is going to be impacted by this stuff, let's assume that this stuff, right, this product passports and traceability need will impact your company. And there we go. Now, it is tempting to stay stuck in this legislative framework and just say, well, you have to do this because of policy, therefore their companies get to work. However, to me, that's not really where companies are going to get very excited, right? They're probably going to want to work on something that adds value, that makes them money effectively, and not on just meeting another regulatory tick box. So we are actively looking within TNO and in our projects for ways that we can implement a digital product passport to enable the circular economy and at the same time create value for companies. Now, there's a couple of places where we see that happening. Obviously in accelerating sustainability, right? There's a big sort of room for improvement there. That's squarely in the crosshairs of the ESPR as well, of course. When it comes to resilient value chains, that's now quite an important topic as well, I've noticed. You want to be able to keep your business going when material imports cease being something you can take for granted, right? So this is effectively risk mitigation that you can do using these systems and technologies. And then finally, there's all sorts of new business models and sort of ways of creating earning power in the circular economy that for some companies will require quite a big shift in the way they're currently doing business, because you may implicitly right now rely on an infinite supply of resources and an infinite waste dump that you can use at the end of your value chain. But if you start rethinking that a little bit, there's opportunities there as well, at least we find in our research. Right. So hoping you're still sort of with me here and you're thinking now, all right, these product passports, these seem like a pretty good idea and I want to implement that. I want to get going here. I want to do something with this. There's two areas where you're probably going to be asking questions about. Right? So on the one hand of the slide here, on the right-hand side for you, it's about making the right data available. So within my company, what data do I have that should probably be shared with my value chain members in some way to enable circularity and do product passport-like things? And then secondly, well, if you're sharing with your value chain partners, you have an interaction with them, and you probably need to make agreements about that. And that's where things tend to get quite difficult, because making data available within your company, that is, well, still difficult, but it's also a bit of a standard digitalization challenge, right? It's something that companies have been doing for years. There's all these commercial consultancy firms that can help you with that. And, well, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a solved problem, if you will. However, the ecosystem agreements part, that is often overlooked, and I think quite a bit more complicated, because now it's about collaborating with your competitors, with your suppliers and your customers, and finding a business model that suits everybody, right? So how do we set up this set of agreements that lead to something that's beneficial to all organizations in your ecosystem? There you have a lot of challenges about cross-sectoral collaboration, about the collaboration between big and small companies. So all the small challenges that you can sort of gloss over while you stay within your organization now become very, very major sticking points. And what we see often happening there, and what I hope we can break through, is what we've dubbed the collective action problem. For all organizations in this ecosystem, it's easy to sit back, relax, and wait for your competitor to first figure out this ecosystem collaboration, right? They can first figure out all the difficult stuff, make the investment, and then later on, you can sort of copy their homework, and you can step in and still reap quite a bit of the benefits without having the cost, which for a commercial company, that is a very appealing proposition. You just, have the benefits, none of the costs, your return on investment is going to be better if you step in late. Issue is everybody is doing that, so nobody takes the first step and nothing gets done. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these ecosystems and a lot of value chains, even in countries at times. Everybody's looking at everybody else, and the real implementation work isn't being picked up anywhere. Obviously, that is a problem, right? If you are with me still from the sustainability challenges, and we want to tackle that, and at the same time, we're seeing people looking at each other without doing anything, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to stay stuck on needing two Earths to manage our resources. Right. Then sort of making that problem even bigger is if a group of companies can get together and take that first step. So for example, you have a automotive sector somewhere, or in the Netherlands, high-tech machine manufacturing that gets together with 10 or 20 companies, and they agree this is how, as an ecosystem, we're going to collaborate. This is how we're going to make product passports work, and how we're going to sort of create value for everybody, and they're going to solve all those difficult questions I mentioned earlier. Then still we're not quite there, because if all sectors or countries or value chains do this in isolation, we get here path one, right? A bunch of silos being built that are, again, not interoperable with each other. So you may get value created within that ecosystem, which is, to be clear, better than not doing anything, right? But in a few years, you're probably going to want to connect your ecosystem to another ecosystem. And if you've not thought about how to do that, you'll be in a bit of pain, and you'll need to go through a major rework, if you're not careful, to set up this connection. So instead, what we tend to pitch in our projects is we should really keep path two in mind here. How can we set up interoperability between organizations and between ecosystems at large, straight from the get-go? And that is in part a technology question, but also in part a governance and organizational question, and even a legal one. But spending that effort now, I believe, is easier than trying to repair disjointed ecosystems in a few years. But it does, again, increase the complexity right now. This idea here, this part two, in the Netherlands specifically, we've brought up to our national government, our Ministry of Economic Affairs, and they were sort of along with our thinking there, and they realized, yeah, we want interoperable ecosystems. They also recognized this problem of not having a first mover, or the collective action problem. And in the Netherlands, that led to the creation of our Center of Excellence for Digital Product Passport. So that has been in close collaboration with government, research institutes, and some private companies there as well, to highlight how we have an issue here that needs solving on a higher level than just a single organization. So we ended up at our national government. And our national government was kind enough to help us set up this coordination initiative. So That is all we do now in the Netherlands for the Center of Excellence of Digital Product Passports. We do not do any major research. We don't develop new technologies. What we try and do is make various initiatives that are already happening and technologies that are already being developed available to the various partners and the ecosystem at large. So they will all hopefully build their sectoral initiatives or their smaller initiatives based on the same technologies and the same sort of organizational agreements. So hopefully, and I mean this is work in progress, so I don't know exactly yet, but hopefully this will lead to a situation in a few years where all these sectoral initiatives happen to be interoperable with each other, right? And if we manage at that point, it will feel very natural and like it took no effort at all. But if it feels like it took no effort at all in a few years, it's because right now we're really thinking about how to ensure that. What technologies, what standards are needed here to ensure, for example, the steel sector is going to be interoperable with the high-tech machine building sector in the Netherlands that, of course, uses a lot of steel, right? Okay, so a couple of specific things that we are focusing on in our coordination effort and in the ecosystem we are setting up on a national level. It's the cross-sectoral collaboration, as I just mentioned, right? Steel and high-tech machine building, or textiles and, well, basically any other domain where they use textiles. Those things seem to go into anything. Right, so setting up cross-sectoral collaborations there. We also want to kickstart the adoption of product passports, because to me a lot of the sort of the hard challenges have, when it comes to technology at least, have already somewhat been answered, right? There has been a lot of research going into this topic. A lot of the really fundamental challenges are things you can just sort of look up nowadays. So you could, you know, start working on your implementations and get going. Not everything is there yet. I mean, I'm sure we'll have talks later today about the European standardization work, for example, which is a few months out still before they publish something, but a lot of things are already known. So as a company, you could get started already. On the bottom here, it says support SMEs. That's another major pillar that we're trying to work on. If you're a very large OEM, you can have a whole building full of R&D people, and you have an IT department that spans multiple countries. You don't really need any help from an initiative like this, right? You have people that you can hire that look into all of this stuff. So, I mean, they can still benefit from these kinds of national coordination initiatives. It's just not really tailored for them. Whereas if you're an SME, which has a dozen or 2 dozen employees, and your IT department consists of your CEO on his Friday night trying to figure out how to keep them emails going, you know, then you're in real need of help here. So especially those organizations we try to tailor our communication and events for in this initiative. And then finally, I mentioned technology. A lot of topics have been tackled to some extent already. The value chain agreements and how to collaborate with your competitors, for example, always is a very difficult topic, where it really helps if you have some party that can mediate and step in to help out, if you will. So we're trying to support value chains there as well, on making agreements on how to use the digital product passport and how to set up these collaborations. And hopefully, like I said, this is work in progress, right? It's not done, but we are hoping and expecting that this will overall lead to more adoption of product passports, at least in the Netherlands, right? Keep in mind, it's just a national initiative. That not only we have a bunch of product passports adopted, but they're also interoperable and they are sort of connected in this larger ecosystem, which hopefully really helps scale up our initiatives. I think that has been my last slide already. Yeah, it has been. So thank you very much, and that's been my presentation.
Thank you for your insightful presentation.